Hello, 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 and welcome back to Scoutcast, brought to you by Fantasy Football Scout. As always, you're joined by me, Andy, FPL mode, after Game Week 1, because Game Week 1 is now almost in the books, although Man United are playing at the moment. So we do apologise if every now and again our head moves. If you're listening on the pod, then it's not on. We're not, we're that professional, we're not even watching the game. As always, I'm joined by Seb. How is it going, Seb?
Hey mate, really good, thank you. Really good. Lovely to meet you digitally once again after meeting you in reality only a few days ago.
I know. Yeah, we obviously both went to Fest. We were gutted to not have Rich there, but me and you were there. We were kind of representing Scoutcast, weren't we? And yeah, it was a good night, wasn't it?
It was lovely. It was good to put so many faces and I guess bodies below shoulders to voices that we've all known for so very long.
It's a weird thing to say, Seb.
You can take
What
that however you
happened?
like, mate. I will speak no more what happened after 1.5 years.
Exactly. Gentleman never tells, mate. And Rich, obviously you weren't there with us, but you were there in spirit. We missed you being there, but how's your Game Week 1 gone so far?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, yeah, I was gutted not to come. Although, from what Seb said, maybe it's best I didn't.
Yeah.
Game week one's been all right actually. I think
Yeah.
it's been all right for a lot of people. There's not been any huge swings.
No,
I think.
carry on, sorry, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I think at one stage it looked like the Saliba against Gabriel thing was going to be huge.
Yeah.
But it wasn't too bad in the end. It was no worse than. I mean, I can't believe I'm going to mention this again. When Edison and Saka didn't get given their assists last season,
Yeah.
it's not much worse than something like that happening.
Let it
No,
go.
exactly.
Let it go.
Never.
And Seb, how's yours doing so far? So Game Week 1, obviously, like I said, we've got one game left on now. How's it going so far?
Yes, all right. I think I'm a little bit behind both of you, which means a little bit behind most people. But it's one of those. I don't have Gabriel. I do have Gabriel. I don't have Saliba. I played James over Chilwell. James over Chilwell, whatever. And I have Gabriel and not Saliba because I literally ignored you at 25 past 6 when you told me he was out. I was talking to someone and Andy was like, Seb, Gabriel's out. I'm going to do Saliba. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I just didn't do anything.
That was it.
So that is entirely on me. But yeah, all right. Much of a muchness. Got all the same players that other people have. Edison get the clean sheet when many other goalkeepers didn't. So I will take that to the bank and savor it for when he doesn't next week.
Do you remember last season when, Seb, you were talking about for weeks on end about not doing too many transfers during the unlimited transfers at the World Cup because if there's a tiebreaker, that's going to end up costing you. Not listening to Andy has cost you way more than that.
Yeah.
I mean,
But then I would have had to listen to Andy. So
I say this every
true.
week, boys. You don't listen to me enough. Right. Moving on to my week. Yeah, my week's gone okay so far. I've got 3 playing tonight, so I'm looking forward to seeing how they get on. And apart from that, like Seb's just said there, I locked in on Friday morning because I didn't want to do any transfers after having a few pints. And then Stones wasn't playing. And then we got the news that Gabriel wasn't playing. This is, by the way, we didn't get this from anybody that is like our own source. This was just us getting it from general Twitter. We're struggling to get it from general Twitter because we didn't have a lot of internet access at Fest. And yeah, then we were going outside. I think it was 6:28 my Gabriel to Saliba move went through. So yeah, it's good fun, isn't it? This is what FPL is all about.
The Yeovil internet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was like being at home. It was terrible. Go to Londoners 5G and I couldn't get anything. Anyway, what are we going to be talking about tonight? Well, obviously there is an awful lot to talk about tonight. Before I say anything though, and Seb, you're going to commend me for saying this, everything we look at tonight is a small sample size, okay? So don't take everything for gospel, but obviously we have some stats to have a little bit of a look at anyway. So we're going to have a look at our points and see how we're getting on this week, although we've already kind of discussed that, so we won't go into it in too much detail. We're going to be looking at Chilwell and James. They are top of the hype train at the moment, including one other player, which we'll talk about later as well. But Chilwell and James we do want to talk about, and Seb had a few interesting observations while he was watching the game. We're going to be looking at the players that performed over expectations based on XG, and also look at those players that maybe performed under expectations based on the XG they put up this week. We're going to be looking at Team XG and Team XGC, so how teams did in terms of getting shots off and how teams did defensively getting shots off, with one team in particular who did quite poor. Then we're going to look at the over and unders for the next 3 weeks. So I'm going to give the boys some over and under scores and they're going to see whether they would like to go over or under those scores. Then we're going to look at our teams and how they're set up. And we've also got the community team, which I think did quite well. Shout out to anybody that is from the community team in the chat. Yes, you're doing quite well at the moment. Thank you as well for anybody that saw us at Fest and came up and said hello. We tried to say hello to as many people as possible, but obviously it was very busy. But thank you so much if you've been watching and you came and spoke to us. Right. So, first points then. At the moment, I am on 67 points. I had Pickford in goal with 2 points, which people are already telling me was a mistake after one game week, but we'll see after a couple more weeks. I've got Shaw, who's playing tonight. Shaw came in for Stones late on Friday. Saliba, who came in late for Gabriel, who could have had a monster haul at one point, but settled for the 5 points. Estupinan with 7. Martinelli with 5. Rashford, who's playing now. Matoma with 5. Bruno, who's playing now, Saka with 10, Haaland with 26, and Pedro with 7. I had Chilwell on the bench, Colwill on the bench, and Osula on the bench, with Turner as well there. Chilwell obviously getting me 7 points, but I set up my team quite a while ago when I wasn't going to be playing Chilwell, so I'm content with the fact he was there on my bench. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying watching him against Liverpool, but I won't talk too much about that because I know, like I said, Seb wants to talk to us a little bit later about Chilwell and James. So 67 points with 3 to play. I'll take it. More than happy with that. Rich, moving on to your points. Talk us through how you've done so far.
Yeah, so I'm on 70 points with 3 playing right now. So Shaw, Bruno and Rashford. So I'll probably end on 76 or so. So I'll be pretty happy with that. My team, it's not too different to yours or to many other people's. I've got went for the Pickford and Turner combo in goal. Estupinan, who everyone seems to have, with James and Chilwell on the bench. Then because of Diaz and Gabriel, so Diaz, I decided to go for Shaw after a lot of thought. Someone I'd not even considered most of the pre-season. And then when we found out the Gabriel news, I switched to Saliba. Then I just thought, this is so boring, so I switched to Rico Lewis
Love it.
instead. I actually had, because of Praz, I'd actually done a little flowchart of things to do, depending on news. Next to Rico Lewis, I've just got Rico Lewis starts, be sensible.
And you forgot
I wasn't. And
yeah.
It saved a little bit of money as well. My midfield, I got Mbeumo, Martinelli, Saka, Rashford and Bruno. The only real decision there, I couldn't decide between Martinelli, Odegaard and Havertz. I'm obviously pretty happy just going for Martinelli.
Yeah.
It's kind of that mid price. And then Haaland captain and João Pedro up top with $1 million in the bank. The only thing I slightly regret is I did consider Pickford to Edison and then having double City defence. But I can see that I'm just hoping there's something to spend that $1 million on in the coming weeks, because otherwise I'm going to be totting up in my mind. Everything Edison does over the Pickford and Turner combo. Yeah. I'm going to be totting that up. And I can see Seb nodding because I think he might have one. He might have gone Edison again.
I know what you mean. That was the only thing. I think it's because it came so late and because I was about 8 points down at the time. But I had 1.5 in the bank as well. And I'm just thinking, should I have used that? But you're probably thinking the same as me, though. You're looking at maybe some of your midfielders and some of these players we're going to be talking about tonight and thinking it's probably going to be quite a bit easier to get to those players. So there's pros and cons.
That's the thing. I did want to keep it, but I didn't know if João Pedro would be... I didn't know, and again, small sample, we're going to keep saying that, but it's only one game. Yeah. He looked good. He played more minutes than I thought. Yeah. So maybe I won't need my 4th, 5th defender as much as I thought. Yeah. Also, it was so panicked when we got the Gabriel news. So only because I went Gabriel to Lewis did I even have the money to do Pickford then up to Edison. I just didn't have enough time to think about it.
Yeah, fair enough. And Seb, moving on to yours then. I do like how all our teams look slightly different by the end of the deadline, which is quite nice. Talk us through yours, including an interesting choice with your Chelsea wing-backs there.
Yeah. Edison in goal, which is comfy enough. I think I said I was going to go there. I actually wasn't on the night. I had Vardiel and a cheap goalkeeper. I think I might have had a goalkeeper rotation still in Pickford, probably. With, obviously, Stones was out, but so was Vardiel. I'm very easily just happy to go back to Edison, no problem at all there. And I think I went to Baldock, which meant I played Reece James, I think. I could have played Chilwell, should have played Chilwell maybe in hindsight. Talk about them and how Chelsea looked a little bit later, but that would have given me a few points. But I don't mind that at all. It was a bit of a coin toss as I saw it, so I'm happy to be on the wrong side of it. Gabriel, a bit more annoying. Mentioned that one. Probably should have made the switch to Saliba rather than ignoring you, or at least done something about it. Saliba got himself an assist, so I was happy when they conceded, but Saliba got himself an assist.
I love the fact it isn't you misheard me or anything. It's like you intentionally.
I just straight ignored you. Yeah, I just straight ignored you. That was I don't. Yeah. I have no excuse. Terrible. It's just being rude, I guess. Estupinan, as everyone else there as well. I have Rashford and Bruno playing tonight. Vice captain Saka, who got himself a lovely goal. That was the Saliba assist, wasn't it? It was one of those pass it sideways. The player does all the work. Is that brilliant? Thanks. I did go with Havertz over Martinelli. Another one a bit like James and Chilwell that just don't mind. Havertz will move on in a couple of weeks. Martinelli's assist came from messing up a skill and it falling to Nketiah. So fair enough. Like I can't predict that stuff. Mbumo with the penalty, which is very pleasing. Haaland captain, like everyone else. And João Pedro, who I was probably slightly more bullish on than most. Mostly just because sticking his numbers into a few of the tools like the Scout members area and review, I had his minutes in my own head higher than many other people. So I think the defaults for some of the models were about 40 minutes, which meant he wasn't recommended. I stuck him up to about 60 and he came out nicely. That was all the confirmation bias I needed. He did, in fact, take the penalty that we thought he might have been on, which is lovely confirmation. And I think my main takeaway from the first week, just for me personally, is, minutes and penalties are just as big as ever. Yeah. And of course, it won't happen every week, but that's kind of where I've done well in my team. And then the bench is cheap players and Chilwell, who obviously I should have played, but I'm not too fussed about that.
Well, that's a nice little segue because obviously
I have 1.5 in the bank as well, I should say. So I've ruined your segue. I have 1.5 in the bank, which was actually an important part of this team. João Pedro could become Jackson. Havertz can go all the way up to a 9 or any other midfielder. And actually, what I think I might end up doing at some point was the plan anyway, was Gabriel to like a Trippier. So a key part of the team was the ability in a couple of weeks' time to make one of those moves. Nice. Sorry, Andy, back over to you.
That's all right. Talking about that nice little segue, James and Chilwell. So you were just mentioning there a few times, you played James, you feel like maybe you should have played Chilwell. When we were watching the game yesterday, it was absolutely terrifying as somebody that had Chilwell first on my bench, watching the positions he was getting into. And apart from VAR obviously stepping in and stopping that goal that he had as well, just after his assist, it could have been a hell of a lot worse. So Seb, you just want to talk us through a little bit what we've seen, what we saw in that game, and whether we're going to continue to see it.
Sure. So I went James, coin toss, no problem there. This is not trying to retroactively justify any of that, of course. This all starts really with, I guess, a tweet from up on the screen here at Blue Footy, so a Chelsea account, you would imagine, just talking about how Pochettino was asked after the match about, you played 3 at the back despite playing 4 at the back most of pre-season. And he actually corrected the person who asked this question and said, I played 4-2-3-1. And I played Chilwell at left wing in order to deal with Trent Alexander-Arnold stepping into the midfield with Colwill at left back. He then went on, I believe, to say, or at least it was inferred, that however this then ended up on the pitch was more the player's interpretation of his instructions rather than necessarily literally his instructions. So what we have here then is from the Scout members area, we have the average positions of Chelsea's team. And I think there's a nice little exercise here where, you could definitely see that as 3 at the back. But if he says it's 4 at the back, you also can make this 4 at the back. And I think quite nicely, especially if we go back to when we were looking at this last week, 2 weeks ago, just looking at Chelsea's pre-season shape. There's that back 4, which is Reece James, the 2 centre-backs, and then Colwill at left back. The pivot in the midfield, Gallagher and Enzo in there. Yeah. And then this 3 behind Jackson. I say behind Jackson. Jackson is dropping in there. But again, we did point that out last week, which is a nice little confirmation that shape is probably what we're looking at. Sterling, the most advanced, but 21 is Chilwell there. If they are playing 3 at the back with Reece James and Chilwell as the wing backs, which is also something you could absolutely argue by looking at that shape, then Chilwell looks terrifyingly advanced. If they're playing 4 at the back, then Chilwell is a left winger, and that looks exactly how the left winger should look. So I think the interesting thing here is we couldn't necessarily have predicted that Chilwell would be that advanced. And if you saw that and were worried, I would say don't be so worried. Going forwards, it is likely that Chilwell is going to be a left back in a back 4, with Reece James obviously right back. And in pre-season, we saw Reece James being a little more depressed in his position, with Chilwell the further forward. Not that Reece James was too far back, though, compared obviously here where Reece James is the much further forward than Colwill, but then that's probably just how they're going to play their positions relative to their own understanding and, of course, relative to how Chilwell is going to play. But my takeaway being as well, just at the bottom of the screen here on the right, we have the underlying numbers. Chilwell with the greater goal threat, Reece James with the greater assist threat, which I think is probably all how we understand they play their positions. Reece James just edges it in terms of the XGI, but obviously this is a 1-game sample, so I'm not putting that forward as a project this over the season, but more just a way to interpret what we saw on the day and what we might see going forwards. And if you wanted a one-line takeaway, I am excited to own both, and I would encourage others, fitness allowing, to do the same come game week 3.
So what do you think then, Rich? Because genuinely, like I said, watching that game, Reece James, interestingly, has slightly better stats in terms of his XGI, but it was Chilwell that I was watching I was absolutely terrified of in terms of his average position and getting into the box. And we said it pre-season, didn't we, that he's more of the goal scorer, Reece James more of the assister, which I think we saw as well. If you had neither, which one would you be prioritising? And how quickly would you be prioritising them?
Oh, that's tricky. Because like you said, Chilwell does have the more goal threat. Yeah. Reece does have more assist threat. Like we talked about pre-season. And if you ignored, if you covered Chilwell up, like close your eyes, cover Chilwell up, you'd want James just based on the stats in the one game, based on the 15 games Reece played last year as well. I think to answer your question, it's harder than you think. I think it's going to be Chilwell, and I think 99% of people you ask would say Chilwell as well.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that James could have penalties. And obviously, they've got a very good fixture run. We might not find out till midway through this fixture run who it's going to be. And then you've basically got a 9-point penalty because of the bonus points that James is going to accrue if he takes it. And that's why I know Seb started James over Chilwell. I also have both. My first sub was James over Chilwell, and it was because of the penalties. So I think I would go Chilwell.
Yeah.
But it could change very, very, very quickly, and I'd want both. I mean, that's why I did make some sacrifices game week 1, like not having Edison, so that I've got both ready.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And obviously, as an owner of both, I didn't even, I knew this could be a possibility, but I never accounted for it. And even if, Seb's saying, Poch is saying they played a back 4, but regardless, I'd have wanted both. So
yeah,
I think things have got better since yesterday as a double Chelsea defence owner.
And we should add as well that James got 76 minutes here, Chilwell 89.
Yes.
Which I believe James was only subbed off just because minutes were managed as opposed to any injury or anything. Assuming games are going the way Poch wants, that could be a very repeatable pattern, right? So even if James was getting better per minute numbers, you might prefer Chilwell because you're more likely to get the 90 out of him.
Yeah. Caicedo going to make any kind of difference? It shouldn't make any difference to the wing back, should it?
Should make Chelsea, in theory, better defensively. Let's see how they shaped up. I think that Liverpool match, both teams were probably lacking, funnily enough, the same player. Right? They were both lacking Caicedo.
I mean,
now Chelsea have got both, him and Lavia, it seems.
Yeah, I know.
So I don't know what Liverpool are going to do, but I think trying to take too much more away from that game, which I appreciate the irony as someone who's just, put a picture on the screen, but hopefully this is more structural than trying to say, this is what we'll see forever. I think Chelsea looked good, but one game where teams are still betting in for the season, both teams will maybe lacking a key midfielder. Let's revisit this again in a few weeks' time, especially if signings are made.
Yeah. And Rich, before we move off Chelsea here, Nicholas Jackson as well. Obviously blanked, got 1 point. I think some owners might be looking out there and thinking, especially when you have players like Pedro did it. And did he impress you? Do you feel like he's somebody that is now going to be on your watch list?
I think a lot of that depends on Pedro and depends on Watkins. Depends on the two players we own at the moment. Because obviously Watkins, Villa have got, Everton at home. I think we can discount the game. Well, not discount it, but let's see how they do against Everton. You'll suspect they do very well. Pedro has another, slightly impressive game, puts up the numbers, puts up, more importantly, the minutes.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd bother trying to free up the 1.5 because Chelsea, all the value in that team is Chilwell, James. I mean, obviously with the back 4, is Colwell going to play? Probably. So he's great value. Sanchez depends on what backup keeper or what goalkeeper Chelsea sign.
Yeah.
He could be great value as well. I see all the value in defence, and I've kind of gone off Sterling after yesterday. It's only taken me a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see the appeal of Jackson, but I think it depends so much on what Watkins and Pedro do, because otherwise you've got to do so much surgery.
Sterling was a really interesting one because I think in terms of FPL, he solidified for me that he's not an option at the moment with the way he's playing. But in terms of how important he is for that Chelsea system, I thought he was really important. The way he was tucking in and obviously letting James go past him and all that, I thought he played really well and he played in a really mature way as well. And I think That's not good for FPL, so I won't talk about
No,
it too
that's
long.
what that was my point. Sorry, I'd never slag off Sterling.
No,
But,
I know.
yeah.
But I agree. And actually,
for
he's
FPL.
the litmus paper, isn't he? He's that. Do you watch someone like Sterling and go, actually, he's playing really well, or do you go, oh, he hasn't returned, he hasn't done very well? And actually, he played really well for Chelsea, but it's like you said, there's so much value in defence. And I'm a Colwell owner. I loved how great he looked in terms of passing. Like, I feel like he could be racking up although that bonus as well. So if they keep a clean sheet and James and Chilwell don't do anything, I feel like Colwell could be up there with a bonus. So I was quite happy owning him too.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think we could be looking at a triple up in defence. I guess a lot of it's going to depend on if Jackson scores or not next week.
Yeah.
That's it. That tends to be how it goes.
Yeah, big time.
Or if he takes a penalty, obviously then he bumps up massively.
Yeah, big time.
Sorry to keep talking about penalties, but this is the biggest dilemma is Chelsea because we're coming into this amazing run of fixtures for them and then for Spurs.
Yeah.
And we don't know the penalty takers.
And I tell you as well, another player that impressed me, but it's going to be so hard to get him in because we can't fit any more midfielders in, and we're looking at the wing backs for for value, and even someone like Jackson. Enzo Fernandez could have a season as well. He was incredibly good that night, I thought. And if he's going to be pushed further forward because of Caicedo and he's playing that kind of pivot with him, the other thing is, I guess, even someone like Gallagher, if he starts playing behind, playing in that attacking midfield, they just seem to have so many options around everywhere. But like you said, the value does seem to be in defence more than anything else.
Yeah, and I think we're going to struggle to have enough spots for midfielders in a couple of weeks. So that's
time.
where I think Enzo. I think by the time we know if Enzo's an asset, and he might be, I'm going to say probably not. I don't want another Gundogan to happen again. By the time we know their good fixtures run end, because they've got an incredible run, then they've got an awful run.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the time to move is now. And if you get on the wrong one, so what? It happens.
Yeah.
I think the thing I'd need from Enzo is like him having penalties, which you said a minute ago. Sorry to talk about penalties. I'll never be sorry to talk about penalties. I think with where we are at now with fantasy football, right, with so many people putting out great stuff, talking about the game, with so many managers understanding it so well, with such a good handle on how we can use numbers and stuff to project scores. I think one of the very few edges, but big edges left, is predicting the minutes of players, predicting the tactical setups. And then, penalties. If you can get on players who have got minutes, penalties, and they're in a relatively favourable position, you've got a very, very good team.
And I hate to mention it again, but last season with Isak against Wilson, I guess that kind of confirms how important, I guess, predicting minutes are and predicting penalties, because that was literally both, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And how important it is if Seb picks you, because you're just going to have to do well then, aren't you? Right, moving on to our next section.
Third out of the three of us, I think. So I don't know about that this week, my friend. Where was Kai Havertz? Come on.
These are our overachievers this week. So the players that maybe didn't accrue as much XG or XGI as we were expecting, but they still got points and they still got returns. So top of it is Haaland. I think we're not really going to talk about him too much. The two finishes were lovely. We know he can do it. We all own him. I think he's now over 90% owned, which is just ridiculous. But there you go. So we won't talk about him too much. But Rodri's also there. Isak, funnily enough, is there. He is the highest brought in player this week so far. He is the only player that's gone up in price. So he is now 7.6, I think is his price now. Maddison's next. Maddison did very well in terms of obviously assists, but he got more than we were expecting.
I guess you don't get much XA for trying to dive and then getting tackled, do you?
Oh, rich.
I mean, it's true. He was going to the floor.
Anyway.
I wasn't judging Maddison. I was just saying.
No, I know.
Stats.
Harvey Barnes is next. Obviously, he only had a 25-minute cameo and did incredibly well with his goal and assist. Emerson Royale, then Eddie Nketiah, Martinelli, and Adingra from Brighton. Now, Rich, if I go to you first, my friend, looking at this list, anybody here, again, small sample size, we say this over and over again, but is there anybody here that maybe we should temper expectations for because they maybe overachieved a little bit in game week 1?
I mean, I can see why all of these are on here. Like Emerson Royal, that's pretty obvious why. I mean, the obvious ones would be like Rodri.
Yeah.
You get the X-Mins, but I don't think you're going to get the output like that every week.
No.
I don't take too much away from a lot of these. I was actually eyeing up very early on, Archer to Nketiah, for example. But I think it's just too risky. I basically talked myself out of it within about 2 hours because we're going to have Jesus coming back. Is Nketiah definitely going to start as well? So the same problems we had game week 1, the same reason we didn't pick Nketiah game week 1. Although I think Jesus, his return to play is a bit quicker since the deadline. As in there was pretty positive update from
the United game, I think.
Arteta. Yeah, I think that's what he's targeting.
Yeah.
No, there's just, I mean, like you say, it's a very, very small sample size. I don't think anyone's going to be getting carried away because, I mean, Adringa came off the bench.
Yeah.
Martinelli, I said Maddison got lucky with his second assist, but obviously Martinelli, Seb touched on it earlier, he got lucky, with his assist. Harvey Barnes again came off the bench.
Yeah, he did.
Isak, the minutes. I mean, the games coming up, they're horrific. The reason no one had Isak, I saw people saying, why did I not go for Isak? But I mean, you look at the next 3 fixtures and that's why you didn't.
And also, we didn't go for him because shock horror, what happened? Callum Wilson came on with 30 minutes to go and, returned. And that's what keeps happening, isn't it?
That's the thing. I mean, if one of them was nailed, we wouldn't be having this discussion about João Pedro. We wouldn't be talking about Jackson. We'd just have Haaland and Newcastle striker.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, maybe not with the fixtures. Actually, maybe even with the fixtures if they were 90-minute men on penalties. But
Alpine saying, I love Andy's regular cheeky looks up. Yeah, I am. I'm keeping looking. It's still 0-0 at the moment, 27 minutes.
Someone needs to Photoshop you with a spider in the corner. That's what.
Yeah. Seb, looking at this list as well. I mean, Maddison is somebody that is already getting a load of hype. He did look good. Spurs were what a lot of people thought they were going to be in terms of they're going to be so exciting going forward, but they're not going to be able to defend. And that's pretty much what we saw in that 2-2. Again, obviously it was only their first game. That could change. But Maddison, look, he was on free kicks, he was on corners. He was very integral to the way they played. He is somebody that, although he overperformed maybe in week 1, we're maybe led to believe that it could continue.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to sign a striker as well, which either gives us another option. Well, I say they're going to. I would imagine they will sign a striker, which either gives us another option or gives Maddison another option for which to get points. Yeah, that's the word today, which would be really interesting, wouldn't it, from an FPL point of view? Where do your loyalties lie there? But even if Richarlison comes good, there's a very nice option there. Out of position 7.0. Didn't see too much in the first game. But speaking of not seeing too much in the first game, I feel like I should just expand on, we've mentioned small sample size a few times. So 2 main things about this table. Firstly, that's a big old table with lots of numbers. You're going to see a reduced version of this going forwards, including in the next slide in a moment. The reason we have this up on Game Week 1 is not to go, these players overperformed. They're either amazing at football or they're really lucky, or you should pick them or you shouldn't. It's just an introduction to something I'd like to bring in every now and again this season when it's interesting, which is our XG over and under performers. We know we've spoken about this enough in the past, but for anyone who's not caught up, expected goals takes the value of the position on the pitch when the shot is taken and a load of other variables like goalkeeper's position, defensive pressure, stuff like that, and sees out of 10,000 times, how many times does that chance type turn into a goal? And thus we can give every chance a percentage chance of turning from that chance into a goal that's represented in a decimal. So like say a 0.5 is a 50% chance of that being a goal. A penalty is about 0.78 off the top of my head, 76, something like that. So you can see that's a very high chance. That's why people often talk about non-penalty XG as well, because you want to take those penalties away to maybe understand how well a player has played. Of course, good players tend to overperform that. Haaland, we will see him score more goals than he puts up XG this season, and that's because he's really flipping good. Most players, however, don't overperform by very much, or if they do, it's very hard to predict. You'll see someone overperform for a season and underperform next season. And that's not saying they need to course correct or anything. It's more just the randomness of that and the fact that we really can't take over especially small sample sizes, things like, goal conversion into account. It's why over a large sample size, we like something like XG. But over a small sample, such as 1 week, XG is close to unhelpful because Isak will score goals this season. At some matches, he will score 2 goals when, in theory, he only deserved, 0.79 or something. But typically when a player scores 2 goals in a single match, they have scored more than they were expected to. And in another match, they'll put up 0.4, 0.5 and not score. That evens out's the wrong phrase, but that sort of smooths out over time to where it becomes quite a useful predictive measure. So don't take any of this as a player is doing too well or too badly in this first week. It's just an introduction to something I'd like to look at. And from an FPL sense, this is a list of players we're going to see transferred in. It's a list of players who scored lots of points for very obvious reasons.
Yeah.
To come back to Maddison, we could say he was lucky. We could say, you know, next week he's going to create a massive chance that someone won't convert. And so again, we need to look over a long period of time. And I will also throw in a little apology, I guess. Was it last week when I think I said, you know, I wouldn't pick Maddison. I'd go Kane, Son if I must go Spurs. One of you two, I think, pointed out where he was playing in preseason, how integral he was looking. If he's looking anything like the Leicester Maddison in terms of pulling the strings and created the chances, I will do a massive U-turn on that. Give Maddison a look when the fixtures look nice. Maybe in a couple of weeks for me for Havertz, or maybe those earlier wild cards. Entirely fair enough. And by then, you know, game week 8 for a wild card, we're going to have a few more numbers under our belt. Nowhere near enough to judge a player in terms of their quality, but enough to make a punt for FPL.
Yeah. And then putting them up on the screen now as well, this is our underachievers. These are the players where if you're looking in game week 1 and you're feeling a little bit hard done by, they're probably going to appear on this list. And I'm not going to lie, the guy that is top of the list, which is Mopé, will probably be top of this list for most of the season because he just cannot finish his chances. And we saw it. Everton they dominated against Fulham. I think they put up almost 3 XG against them, and they still couldn't score against them. And I think even Everton fans said, I couldn't believe we didn't score. So we got Mopé, who's at the top of this. Then Pascal Grosch, Eze, Cash, Dunk, Decore, Abdoulaye Decore, Iwobi, Jackson, Welbeck, and Reece James. Now, Rich, it is literally the case here, isn't it? Where if you own one of these players, you could probably feel a little bit hard done by you didn't get a return in game week 1.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting looking at this list because you see the same teams appearing and then you look at who their opponent was. So
yeah.
So you got Everton, they were playing Fulham. You got Brighton, they were playing Luton. Yeah. That seems to be, most of the list. You've also got Reece James there, you know, right at the bottom as well. So but I see this list as excluding Mopé, although I don't mind Mopé. I quite liked him at Brighton.
Yeah.
Despite maybe Brighton fans not. But I see it as a good list of players. As in, I'd almost look at this after 1 week and say, you know, some of these players are very, very good picks, like Eze, for example. But obviously he was playing against Sheffield United.
Yeah.
They've got Arsenal this week. So I don't see it as a bad thing. And Jackson, you mentioned earlier, you know, against Liverpool, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's, you know, we're not going to linger on this too long, Seb, but like you said, this is something that you're going to revisit every couple of weeks to see if there's anything interesting that pops up.
Yeah, this is the table to pay attention to. So Mopé, we think he might just be a bad finisher. So he needs a lot more XG to get G.
Yeah.
So if he gets lots of XG, fair enough, have a look, but otherwise
plus
maybe.
Calvert-Lewin, I guess, as well. When he's back.
Very, very good point, actually. Yeah, Calvert-Lewin probably takes that spot, doesn't he? But over time, what this table might be interesting to say is that even if someone is a poor finisher, if they're racking up a lot of XG, for example, Darwin Núñez, you might only miss that by 10, 20%, like we were saying. That can still be more than enough goals to look attractive. We'll need a bit more time, again, to have a look. But typically, players that appear on this and that we don't know are poor finishers or play for a poor team and they can't convert their chances because there's this XA as well, they could be a good look. The one that jumps out to me, if I set Reece James aside, be Eze. Fixtures a little bit mixed, super involved. And that 0.92, he got no goals or assists, but he got a combined 0.92 XG and XA. It came from something like 8 shots, 6 chances created. So it's not like he just got one massive chance, which it could be very noisy. You know, one massive chance in the first week and none for another 10 weeks means he falls off this list and we don't care. He was constantly involved. So that would be encouraging to suggest he might keep that up, especially against easier opponents.
Yeah. And I should say
you can
as well,
penalties in, I guess, with that as well, can't you? As in, there's one, maybe 1.5 people on penalties on this list.
Yeah. 1.5.
That's James again.
I know who you're talking about.
And a last little bit, there are 3 players who haven't appeared on either of these lists. I won't tell you who. Go look in the Scout members area. I won't tell you which list, sorry, but they are Foden, Mbumo, and it was João Pedro. Those 3 appear on one of these lists.
Oh, nice. And we will say as well, like Seb just said, it's because they returned, I'm assuming. That's why they're not on the list, is it?
No. So this isn't like goals imminent, which you should go look at. Joe does that, which is a similar idea with, you know, people who are putting up good numbers and not returning. No, this will include people who returned as well. Obviously, in the first week, it's likely not to. But yeah, those three should be on one of these lists, but I cut it off just before they arrived. So
And Bumo
an
got
interesting
over one XG because he had
took a
that
penalty, which
quite
helps.
big chance on the penalty. Yeah,
He missed the open goal, didn't he?
Don't start on that.
Anyway, like as Seb has just said, these are all on the members area as well. So if you want to kind of get to grips with this, because we're doing it every couple of weeks, but if you wanted to have a look at it every week, and it is a nice little indicator to say who is putting up some good stats but maybe not getting the returns. So it's always a good thing to have a look at. We're going to have a quick look as well at the XG and XGC that teams put up this week, just to see kind of who defensively maybe aren't as good as we're hoping, and also who's putting up a lot of the chances. You can tell, you have a look at the results on the side, and obviously most of it just marries up normally anyway. Some of the key things here that I wanted to talk to you guys about, more to do with, is this something we're going to continue seeing moving forward? Rich, the first one's Luton. We already said about Luton potentially being a poor team this year. And obviously, they didn't have the best of starts. But does it say more about Brighton? Does it say more about Luton? Or is it just a bit of both?
I mean, Brighton, towards the end of last season, beat some very, very good teams heavily. So I wouldn't use that to judge Luton. I'm actually a bit disappointed we don't get to see Luton and Burnley this week. Because obviously they had really tough fixtures this week. Now they're not going to be playing. So we're not going to really know much about them. Maybe a bit longer than the other teams. So I wouldn't read too much into it. I mean, I'm not saying I think Luton are going to be good. Yeah. It was nice to see that Morris is on penalties because he's a 5.5. He could be a Pedro exit route once the blank's out of the way.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I'm interested to see a bit more of Luton, and I'm interested to see more of Brighton this week as well.
Yeah, I am a little bit as well because I think Brighton look good, and I think we all expect Luton to struggle this year, but it's always hard after that first game because teams can do it where they struggle in the first week and then they kind of find their feet. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Penalty?
Is that Shaw? The shot?
Don't know. Next one, Seb, I wanted to talk to you about Villa. Obviously, Villa got absolutely destroyed by Newcastle. Villa had 3.41 XGC against them. Sorry, we're getting completely distracted here. It's terrible. Is that something, especially with Mings now out, and the fact that, I mean, Mings was quite integral to the way they were playing, and obviously he's very important to them. They like playing those centre-backs as well. Might bring in another centre-back, which is Pau Torres, and obviously he's new. Does this just tell us that Newcastle are going to be a force to be reckoned with again this year, considering they've got tricky fixtures coming up? Or is it just one of those fluke game week 1, this could happen any week, it's just happened to happen in game week 1?
I mean, I guess the answer is a bit of both, isn't it? We again offer that caveat that this is a single week, and maybe even more so than the players. This is obviously a good team against the bad, not there's this example, but it can be good teams against bad teams or whatever. So fixture dependent. Where this maybe is useful is just verifying if what you saw on the pitch matched up with the numbers, or did the numbers match up with what you saw on the pitch? So, for example, if you watched that game and you thought, "Oh, Newcastle looked impressive," well, 3.41 XG put up, conceding 1.77. Maybe you'd like them to be a little bit tighter at the back, but yeah, that backs up a 5-1. Obviously, a team that scores 5 just like a player, they're often going to outperform their XG, but it verifies that the result was, I don't want to say deserved, but it was backed up by the underlying numbers on that day, so it wasn't necessarily a fluke. And then the other fixture that I think is interesting to look at is Everton there. So they conceded 1.5 XG here, which saw them lose 1-0 to Fulham at home. So conceding 1.5 to Fulham, it's not a disaster. One match. Let's see how they go over the fixtures. But you'd like them to be a bit tighter, right? If this was Christmas and we had a whole season of data behind us, maybe they've had a good fixture. You'd like them to do a bit better than that. And actually, then, interestingly, themselves, they put up 2.73. So they actually were unlucky to lose, in theory. Maybe they could have won 2-1. But it's the defence, I think, we're looking at mostly for Everton. So I'd like to see a little bit more. But by a little bit more, I mean, really, let's take some time and see how the results and numbers match up.
The thing that was annoying about Everton was that it was basically 2 big chances. That's what they gave up.
There you go. Yeah. So you let in one big chance and these numbers can look terrible. So it is important to give this a bit of time. But I think, they could have won that match. So I wouldn't panic yet. People with Pickford, maybe you were hoping for a clean sheet here. If they cut out one mistake that leads to a big chance, you keep a clean sheet, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Right, moving on then. We are going to go on to my favourite bit now. This is my new segment for this year. I hope you enjoy it. This is the over and under. So I'm going to go through some players for Seb and Rich, and they're going to tell me whether they want to go over and under on their points predictions for the next 3 weeks. Now, these will always be topical players, so I'm not just going to go, I don't know, Caicedo or something like that. And obviously there's somebody we're not going to ever pick. We are going to be talking about players that that we are potentially going to be bringing in. And it's just kind of either tempering expectations or giving you a nice little bit of confirmation bias where you go, yeah, I am going to bring that player in. So the first one then, and Rich, I'm going to go to you first. Reece James. And I went with him first because I know how much you love him. 15 points in the next 3 game weeks. Will you take it or leave it? 15 points. And I actually don't have his fixtures up in front of me. But 15 points. Are you taking it or leaving it? Higher or lower?
Well, I've got over. So I guess I'm going to be taking it.
Yeah, so you're going to go over, sorry.
Over 15. Yeah, I think over 15. I think there's a couple of clean sheets in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's going to get an attacking return. Obviously, this is all fitness dependent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be pretty confident it'd go over 15.
Yeah. Seb?
I went under because minutes. Maybe I'm gambling on an injury. Maybe I'm gambling on a benching, but only because of the minutes.
Something interesting with James, actually, which we haven't mentioned, is obviously he got subbed early, didn't he? Because he was tired.
Yeah.
And I mean, if he's going to get regularly subbed, and I know we tried to predict this with players before. It happened with Trent when he was first in the league. If he's going to get like 70, 80th minute subs, it's not a bad thing for a defender.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you go, oh, that means that those last 10 minutes when they could concede, I might lock in a clean sheet. But obviously, the rest of the match is where they're much more likely to concede a goal because there's 80% more of match. And then with someone like Reece James, are you also maybe just nicking away a little bit chance of an attacking return? I'd be interested to see how that evened out over the season in terms of maybe he misses 5 late goals that Chelsea concede, but maybe he also misses a couple of XG that he could have put up over a season in those last 10 minutes when they're pushing or something like that.
It worked well for Trippier last year.
Very true. Very true. It did.
But yeah, I know that's just one example, but I think I'd prefer it.
Yeah. Okay. Next one then. And I did put this person next because it just makes sense to tag him along with James, is Chilwell. So Rich went over for James. Seb went under 15 points. I'm going to give you the same amount of points. So 15 points for Chilwell now. So Seb, over or under 15 points for Chilwell in the next 3 weeks?
Over, because I think per minute James will go over. So I think Chilwell will, and he will get more minutes.
Yeah.
So you now prefer Chilwell to James?
Yeah, I think I said that earlier. Just in terms of like per minute, I think I would edge James, maybe just based on history. But, I need 90 minutes out of my player if I can, and I think Chilwell gets more minutes.
Rich?
Yeah, over as well.
Yeah,
over as well. I think they're both brilliant. We're almost splitting hairs between the two. I couldn't see a world where I wouldn't want to have both.
The confidence.
Yeah, I started with both, and I'd like everyone to stay away from it because it's a competitive game. But you should get both, I think, by the time Game Week 3 comes. If they're
I wish you could play 3 wing backs. Put it that way.
Shaw just got booked, by the way. Lovely stuff.
Should have played Chilwell.
Next one then, Rich. Isak. So Isak, I've got 10 points for his next 3 game weeks. How do you feel about Isak getting 10 points in his next 3 game weeks?
Yeah, we did talk about it a bit before we started with this one. It was the only one we slightly discussed. I think it's an easy over because while the fixtures are bad, I mean, he's going to get, you'd imagine, 6 points. So he just needs to get like an assist or a goal, really.
Seb?
Yeah, 2 starts, 1 sub appearance is 5 points. So 1 goal and a bonus gets him to the 10. So I say just clears it. He basically needs 1 attacking return, like Rich said.
But
it would be close.
We wouldn't necessarily recommend bringing him in, would we? At the moment.
No, definitely not. I mean, if you were going to have him, it was last week, right? And then now you should wait. They've got, it's something horrible like Arsenal, City, Brighton or something, like basically as bad as you can get.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and 10 points over 3 weeks isn't exactly
That's pretty
impressive,
bad.
is it?
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
3 points a week from
you
like
can
your
get pretty
budget
bad
goalkeeper would
goalkeepers
be
who can
bad.
manage that.
Yeah.
Right, next one. Salah. So everybody watched Salah get an assist at the weekend. Almost got more than that, but didn't. Obviously, he's got Bournemouth up next. I've put 22 points for the next 3 weeks. Now, obviously, Bournemouth is involved in that. So I've done 22 points over 3 weeks. So let's go with Rich first. What do you think?
I mean, he could do it in one game, but I'm going under. I am going under for this one.
Oh, interesting. Seb?
So, how much thought did you put into this one? Because when I was adding it up, I was really interested to see that I think my prediction came down to if he receives bonus or not. So I've gone over because I think, as Rich said, he could do it in one game. But I've gone a little bit conservative, a couple of returns here and there. If he gets bonus with those, I think he just edges over. I think I had him down for about 24.
Yeah,
I mean, it's away at Newcastle, isn't it? And then, I mean, home to Villa's all right. So it's 2 home games.
2 goals, 1 assist against that Bournemouth, and this is done, isn't it?
This was the hardest one to predict because I mean he literally he can hit that in 30 minutes.
Yeah. He might have to if he keeps going off on 70.
That was part of the thinking that came in, and like Seb mentioned about bonus, he was historically never very good at bonus.
No.
I know he's creating a little bit more, but yeah, I didn't account for bonus because I think it absolutely haul to consistently get bonus, and then he's hit the 22 anyway. So
yeah,
it's a reluctant under, a hopeful under.
So the next one of the people that have probably started the biggest hype train so far is James Maddison. So James Maddison, the next 3 game weeks, I've got 16 points because as we just saw on the XG table, he wasn't really there for XG, but his XA was very, very high. So I've put him as 16 points for the next 3 weeks. How are we feeling? Seb?
Yeah, so I think this came down to we don't know how good Burnley are. Like playing Man City at first isn't fair. We can go on last season, but we don't know how that transitions to the Premier League. So I think there's 1 easy game in there, 1 hard game, and then 1 Burnley. I had him as 15 points, so I will go under. But I could be very, very wrong there, and I think it comes down to my assessment of Burnley and how Spurs may shape up. Of course, they go sign Lukaku, they start clicking with a number 9 as opposed to maybe Richarlison, and this all changes, doesn't it?
Yeah, big time. Rich, what do you think?
This was a tricky one as well. I have gone under.
Oh,
but obviously there's unknowns.
Rich.
Like, is he on penalties?
Yeah.
I know Adam's in the chat, and they were talking on above average that. Well, before the season, I had someone who suspected Maddison could be on penalties. Mm. Again, it seems like speculation, just like with Chelsea as well. So I'm going under, and I hope I'm right.
Because there's so many people are going to get like to buy him, aren't they? Either this week or next week. Like a lot of people have already jumped. It's interesting to see how he gets on in the next couple. And obviously with 1 game, it's so hard to know whether it's a pattern or whether it's just a one-off.
It's a little early to have much confidence, but there's a nice gamble there. There's a good edge to be found if you have conviction in your belief in his play under that Tottenham side.
Yeah.
I'm always a bit skeptical when people overhype something, as in like when Onana's price was released and everyone was going absolutely crazy, like Onana, everyone's gonna have Onana. No one's got Onana, or very, very few people have Onana. And I feel like the same with Maddison. He's kind of got a place in people's hearts because he's had some amazing game weeks in the game. And he did look good. Yeah. But you look at both of the assists, and I mean, the first one was almost offside for Romero. Yeah. And then the second one I've talked about already. So I think that chart we had up, it was over 1 XGI. So, I can't knock that at all. Yeah. But yeah, I think I need to see a little bit more from Maddison. So that's why I've gone under, but you put that well, as in that's a tricky one to do an over or under on. Like it could be 15 or 17. Like
yeah, jokes at the end of the season when the actual person who wins this is Andy because he just hits the number bang on every time.
Yeah, exactly. And last one is Gabriel. So Gabriel obviously didn't start yesterday, and he was on the bench, which was interesting. But then obviously Timber looks like he's got a long-term injury, like over 4 months potentially, which obviously hurts Arsenal massively because they wanted to reinforce in their defensive areas there. So Gabriel, I have put 15 points over the next 3 weeks. So that's 2 clean sheets. Maybe some bonus in there a little bit. So Seb, what do you think? Gabriel, 15 points the next 3 weeks.
Well, you kind of mentioned it there yourself. So I think he plays. I don't know how Timber probably doesn't affect him too much though, because if Timber is, currently the option inverting from the left, well, Gabriel's not going to come in for him. I believe Tomiyasu subbed on, which makes sense. Yep. However, it sounds like Gabriel missed out for tactical reasons. Small suggestion of discipline, but I honestly have no idea. I think one match sitting out in however long it's been when he's been absolutely nailed isn't enough to start worrying about him being rotated too much. Next week, okay, fair enough. Yeah. Currently, I think he plays both. 2 clean sheets would put him just under, unless he supplements that with some bonus. And I think with the way Arsenal play, that's not impossible. But Saliba, if I remember correctly, might edge that. The fullbacks, obviously, and then the midfielders if they score a bunch of goals. So he may need some attacking returns, and he has very good attacking potential in terms of the numbers. But 3 weeks is a very small period of time to get that in. That'd be quite noisy. So I've gone under just despite performing well, playing and keeping clean sheets.
Yeah. Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone under. I found that quite easy to do. I don't know if we're going to talk about later.
I was like, oh yeah, all these reasons, and Rich was like, under, mate, easy. Yeah, move on. Thanks.
Well, Seb just told me the reason, so I just like,
oh yeah, bless you,
Gabriel. No, I think the fixtures. I mean, looking at them, they've got Palace away, and it's Fulham at home, and then Man United.
Yeah,
they're at home to Man United. I just don't see. He'd basically need to score a goal. I think a different question. I don't know if we're going to cover what to do with Gabriel.
What? I'm literally just about to say. So, Rich,
another segue ruined. Rich, we're on fire.
Gets over under 15 points. They want to know what to do.
So, Rich, if you were a Gabriel owner, and there is a Gabriel owner on this stream, what would you be doing with Gabriel?
Seb's situation is different because I 100% would sell Gabriel for James or Chilwell, and the big reason why is I don't want to have a player who I bought in because he's nailed for a good team.
Yeah.
Now there's that little bit of doubt. I don't want to be sweating over. I know he had the highest XG for defenders last season. He topped the table. He was a great pick before he got dropped. I don't want to have that worry that he's going to start or not, because he also he came on in the last game. I remember when they got knocked out of Europe, they chuck him up top almost at the end of games. So I could even see if they were losing against Palace and he's on the bench, he will come on because they can just lump it up to Gabriel.
Him subbing on blocked Chilwell points for me. That was gutting.
Exactly.
I thought I got away with it.
Do you want that for? I mean, he's away at Palace. It's not an incredible fixture.
Yeah.
I think I'd find it quite an easy sell, because when you look ahead to game week 3 as well, and I think I do recommend people go on, FPL.team and similar planner tools. When you go ahead to game week 3, it's very hard to know who to bench and who to start. So it's going to be hard to use a transfer. You're probably going to do it on a bench player. So if you've got no other fires, and I don't think many people have, I think it's an easy sell. If you have the extra 0.5.
But you definitely do it this week.
I'll do it this week. I mean, Chilwell might even rise tonight. I'll probably even do it tonight. The reason I say Seb's situation is different is he has the 2 people that I'd want.
Yeah.
A lot of the other players I want in the future are going to be like Newcastle defenders. Newcastle have got awful fixtures at the moment. So I think in a situation like that, I'd probably rather wait.
Right.
Yeah, I was just going to very rudely interject there with, as you said, I think James and Chilwell started, was very happy with that. Obviously, had no idea Gabriel was going to be benched, especially not at 2 minutes to 6:30. No idea. No one told me. I always had my eyes. Say Gabriel had been nailed, scores against Palace, whatever it is. I'd always had my eyes on that 1.5 million. Means I can go from Gabriel to Trippier in game week 5. Obviously, assuming no price changes. But there were a few options I had for that money, so I didn't have to be tied into it. So for me, it would be a question of, do I bring something like that forwards? But if I bring something like that forwards, I'm probably just benching the player I bring in, because I want my double Chelsea. I've got Estupinan, who's still good until I think game week 4 it is. So I personally am quite happy to sit. The thing that might push me would be if he starts looking like dropping in price. Now, a few years ago, I was very, very sensitive to price changes and probably overplayed it. In the last few years, I think it's something I've improved about my FPL game is, chilling out a bit about those, especially now with the emergence of leaks. Right, that information is so much more valuable. But someone like Gabriel in these early weeks, when I've got exact money to someone I know I'm going to want, and if Gabriel does start becoming a rotation threat or what have you, is that 4.9 going to stick? Is it going to cause me problems? The real answer is probably chill out, but I will definitely give it some thought.
Right, moving on to our teams now. So this is my bus team at the moment. This is with no transfers, obviously. So I've got Turner in goal, benching Pickford, playing Turner against Sheffield United at home. Chilwell, Saliba and Estupinan at the back. I got Martinelli, Rashford, Matoma, Saka, Bruno in the middle, Haaland and Pedro up top, with Shaw, Colwill and Osula on the bench. I'm not going to be making any transfers this week unless I've got some injuries, and even then I probably struggle to. I want to roll and go into game week 3 being able to make some transfers if I can. But even then, like Rich has just said, I might be going into game week 3 and I might be struggling to make some transfers, to be perfectly honest. But I still rather have that option and maybe make 1 and save 2 for game week 4 if I need to. So I feel perfectly happy with this team. Haaland as captain. Obviously, the biggest omission, which I didn't realise quite how many people own Salah before I went to Fest, but quite a few do, is there's no Liverpool here. So I'm just going to be completely ignoring that fixture, to be perfectly honest. Apart from that, I'm pretty happy with this team. I don't see anything I'd really want to change. I don't see any glaring things I want to do. Obviously, I started with Chilwell, which is brilliant, so at least I've already got him. There's nothing here that I feel is potentially weak apart from
Can I ask you
having
2 questions?
No, you can't.
I've got 2.
Go
Can
on.
I ask one of them?
What is it?
Right, so my first one, I'll start with the boring one. Oh, actually, they're both quite
Keeper.
boring. No, so Asula.
Oh, yeah,
If you find out he starts on Friday night,
Yeah.
would you start him? Would you push him to first sub?
No and no.
No.
No. He got himself about in the game, but I have no confidence in him whatsoever.
What
so
about
no.
second sub? I told you it was a boring
you
one.
put him first sub, surely. You just give him, because Colwill you've chosen to bench for a reason. Sure, you got to reckon Asila's got maybe a bit more potential if he's going to get 70 minutes or something.
No, and Forest were not as bad at home as they were away last year. So no, there is no way I'm going to put Osula closer up.
Okay, that was the first question.
Yeah.
The second one, do you regret Colwill? Or do you have a James plan?
No, I don't regret Colwell actually, because the James plan could still be moving a Estupinan up to James and having that triple defence.
Triple.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that genuinely I could do that. The only time I thought I might regret it is if it meant that I couldn't get Jackson and Jay or whatever it was. But I could always move Colwell up. That's the other thing. If James is proven to be that essential, I've got all that money in the bank. I could easily move Colwell up. But the idea was to play Colwell and Chilwell and then potentially have like a Jackson or something like that come in. So I knew you'd ask about Colwell, but I liked the way Colwell played. And like I said, if Chilwell and James turn into absolute injury nightmares, which they are more than capable of doing, I'm just hoping Colwell obviously plays a bit more, but we'll see what happens.
Of course, and that's a good point you make on you could sell Colwell. I wouldn't, but he's basically your Rico Lewis, if you see what I mean, as in he's just a 4.5 defender.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, no, I feel okay about it, to be honest. Rich, we go on to your team. Can't wait to see whether you play Archer. Talk us through your best team at the moment.
We'll save that till after I've read my team out.
Yeah.
No, so I've got I'm also starting Turner and benching Pickford. That was obviously the plan before this week. I'm not upset about Pickford.
Yeah.
Defence, I've got Estupinan, James and Chilwell. But midfield, Mbumo, Martinelli, Saka's vice captain, Rashford and Bruno, and then Pedro and Haaland up front with Haaland captain. I've got Shaw first sub, Lewis second sub, and Archer third sub. The thing with Man City players is we're probably not going to get any kind of leaks or anything like that for Man City because there's this next 3 game weeks on Friday night, and Man City play obviously Saturday or later. I think the first one's like 8 p.m. on a Saturday. I think the Newcastle game. So I think it's unlikely we're going to get leaks. So yeah, Lewis is pretty much going to be fodder for me now. Although we got the Super Cup midweek, so who knows what happens there. I can't really see a transfer. I think I'd have been tempted if Jota got more minutes, if Jota looked a bit better. I think he was one I thought I could knee jerk on. Yeah. Martinelli. I don't think it's the week to be bringing in Edison because I think Turner at home to Sheffield United is probably not as good as it gets, but it's one of the better goalkeeper fixtures this week anyway. So most likely I'm going to be just rolling. Mate. Say it again.
Not with Osula playing.
Not with Osula playing. No, that's true actually.
If he knocks out straight to that Turner clean sheet.
Imagine he wipes out your clean sheet.
Yeah, I know.
You're going to be.
Interesting you mentioned there about the Liverpool midfielder. it's because there might be a few people that want to move to that Liverpool midfielder. It looks a little bit dodgy. I don't know. It's against Bournemouth, and that's the problem. I suppose if you had that plan all along, but you've got no intention of doing it, have you, Rich?
No, I mean I'd made my decision on Salah before game week 1. I said no matter what happens, I'm not gonna tear my team up unless something had happened like a Haaland injury.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really don't see a need to do it. I mean, I like my midfielders. I think Martinelli could be one that's not. I don't imagine I'm going to keep him very long.
Yeah.
Although it's half time in the Man United game, we've not hardly watched any of that either. They're probably going to be a longer hold because we've got a couple of decent fixtures. But yeah, I just don't see it. I think I'd instantly regret it. If I bring in Jota or Gakpo and they don't do anything huge, like 15 points plus, I'm going to be sat there with them in my team with an awful run of fixtures.
Yeah.
Transfer behind. Yeah, and I wouldn't captain them. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm not even that nervous, to be honest. I know some people are nervous, but I'm not.
We'll see what happens, won't we? We'll see next week.
There's not many people with them. It's only one game. We've gone weeks without Haaland. Like we did it before the World Cup, and it was fine. He got 1 point.
Exactly. I can't wait to talk about that in game week 8. There is like a solid period where no Haaland might be a decent play.
Right.
Go again.
Speaking of decent plays, here you are then, Seb. Talk us through your best team.
Oh, buddy. You're far too kind. So I'll just pull it up so I can actually talk about something interesting. So I have Edison in goal. I do have Turner on the bench. I haven't really thought about that. Maybe I should be playing Turner, but Edison at the moment, which feels like the default pick. James and Chilwell both starting with Stupinan as well. A midfield of Rashford, Saka, Bruno Fernandes, Havertz, and Bumo. Haaland captain as we stand with Saka on the vice. Bit of a carryover from last week, although might still be the best shout. João Pedro joins Haaland up front. As mentioned, Turner is on my bench. Gabriel is on my bench because I'm playing James, Chilwell, and Stupinan. Baldock and Mbama make up the final spots. No, I will not be playing Mbama. No, I will not be moving him up the list. What I could do, I guess, is I don't think I'd make that Gabriel transfer as mentioned unless I get panicked about money. The only other real thing is, Rich has just mentioned how he wouldn't necessarily have a Liverpool player. If someone, I'm not going to have Salah. I'd love to have Salah, but just this week, and I'd rather have other players the rest of the time. So I'll survive this week. If someone was more confidently nailed in that attack, say a Jota or a Diaz, there could be a cheeky little Havertz sideways move. Sideways is the wrong word, isn't it? But move there. But I'd be asking myself why I did that. Is it because Havertz didn't score in game week 1? Well, then why did I pick Havertz if all I was expecting was a goal in that first week? I think part of the reason I picked him was chance of him being up front, sort of supplementing the idea that still attacking from 8, he could be okay. But realistically, having watched the highlights of the match, looked at some of the numbers, I don't think there's much in it between Havertz and Martinelli, at least so far. And the plan has always been, by about game week 5, I probably don't own Gabriel. I probably don't own Havertz. Maybe even João Pedro has moved. So I don't think I need to do that early. So I'd imagine I panic and have Luis Diaz come Friday.
I didn't even have a chance to thank Seb earlier, actually. A big reason I didn't go for Havertz. So I was on Martinelli most of the end of the week. I saw the spread betting odds for Havertz, and I started thinking, maybe Havertz, he saves money and he's got better odds of scoring. And then you sent a message in WhatsApp just saying, I don't think Havertz will play. I'm not convinced Havertz plays up front. Yeah. And I read that, and then I was thinking about it while working. I was like, yes, Seb might be right here. I didn't ask any more questions about it. It just got me thinking.
You're welcome, mate.
I
took that bullet for you, but Havertz in, I think. So yeah, mine was, you were thinking about the money. Mine was, I didn't necessarily think he'd play up front. There was a chance, right? So I was happy to take those percentages. Mine was more, is it 0.5 cheaper than Martinelli? And as I've mentioned, a lot of my team was set up with that 1.5 in the bank. So if I dropped to 0.5 to get Martinelli, I no longer had, say, a Jackson accessible from João Pedro. I'd have to be going for a 6.5. I couldn't go Gabriel straight to Trippier. So I'd probably have to be like downgrading Martinelli rather than having a few more options in that spot to access the 2 players I was maybe most looking at pre-game week 1 in a couple of weeks' time. So, you might accuse me of overthinking, but I'm satisfied with that pick. Havertz is only here for a couple of other weeks anyway, so I'll hope for some points.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Now looking at the community team. Now this is weird for Seb and Rich because normally it's them talking about this team, but
I don't think I've
obviously
seen
this is
this yet.
now. Yeah, I know. So this is now.
Captain Nick Pope, have they?
Yeah, no, they've done well this week, which hurts.
It's a really strong team, man. It's
it
nicely
is,
put together.
yeah. So they've got.
It's like a lot of sensible picks, and then there's a bit of jam as well, isn't there?
So they've got Onana in goal. They've got Chilwell, Gabriel, and Estupinan. Rashford, who's playing now. Matoma, Martinelli, Saka, and Maddison. And then Watkins and Haaland up top, and Haaland was captain. They got James, Kabore, Mubama, and Turner on the bench. They've done well this week. I think they're beating all of us so far.
Yeah, they should be. Or basically, all their players are returned.
But obviously, they've only got Rashford. So it's a good team, and I'm worried because I spoke to quite a few of them at Fest, and they were very excited and they were very motivated.
It's a very good team. One question I'd have is that, I mean, I almost didn't get to transfer Haaland out for Elite last season because I was doing the community team while Seb was off. I've not seen the same commitment here with Gabriel. Just saying.
Ooh.
They also don't listen to Andy, to be fair.
Yeah, that's why. That'll do you well over a season, but it's small sample size, isn't it? So,
no, it's a very good team.
I think
no
we're
one has
a record
Onana,
for small sample size mentions this week.
Yeah, it's a very nice team. So well done, the team that did it. If they also did Gabriel Saliba, we'd have been in a lot of trouble.
Oh gosh,
lads.
yeah.
Right, on to the last bit of the stream now. So we're going on to the Q&A. So if you've got a question in the chat, please chuck it in. Above average FPL, boy Adam is he's already chucked in a super chat saying answer Scouse Mouse, please. So I'll just scroll back up to see what Scouse Mouse is asking. He says, he's asking lots of questions. Should I keep Stones or do I replace him? So, Rich, what do you think? Does he keep Stones or not?
Well, we got Super Cup this week, so you can see what Pep says. Well, you can see the lineup, and then you can see what Pep says. I can't remember if it's Stones or Diaz. I feel like it might have been Diaz actually, but there was one of them that's not expected to play in the Super Cup, but then expected to be back for the weekend.
Stones was back fine. I think he was back in training.
Yeah.
So was Diaz concussion?
Yeah,
concussion protocol. Yeah. So it might have been Diaz actually.
Yeah,
but that's one I'd wait for the Super Cup. And you've got the press conferences on Friday during the day.
Okay, so he's already done a transfer. So he's already taken Mings out.
Okay, well he's out long term,
and now he doesn't know whether to do Stones.
Well, not for a hit, no.
Oh yeah, gosh, no.
Seb,
unless he's got a load of Luton defenders on the bench.
What Rich said.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tony
Wolves almost scored.
Yeah, I know. Don't. Tony D says, "Do I worry about Martinez, Richarlison, or move out?" I'm assuming that's Martinez is in goal, Villa, and then Richarlison. So he's got those two. He sees them as weak links in his team. Should he move them out now, or should he just hold tight so far? Seb.
Unless there's something I'm missing, I don't think there's a particular reason to move them out. Especially Richarlison. That's a nice value pick in outer position. You'll know if they sign Lukaku or something like that. If they don't, sure, you might have liked him to be as involved as Maddison was or something like that, but he's still playing up front for a team that's got Maddison in, for an attacking team, for a top, insert your London bias number here, club in the country. I think there's more legs in that, unless you get a real reason to move away early.
Yeah. Rich, Serban says, what do I do with Timber?
I mean, it's an ACL, isn't it? So he needs to go. I actually don't know his price. I feel like it might be 5. I'm going to check. I mean, if you can get to, I hate to be repetitive, but I would go for one of the Chelsea wing-backs, full-backs, whatever they are, if possible. Outside of that, it's really tricky. I was thinking as well, I mean, you could always see what happens with Guardiola in the Super Cup as well.
Yeah,
but then it's probably a bit of risk if you haven't got much depth, because there's rumours that Baldock might have a knock. We've obviously got no Burnley and Luton defenders this week. So it is a week, actually, where defenders are actually quite important, as in transfers. But there's not many putting their hand up apart from the Chelsea defenders. Unless, of course, you haven't got Estupinan, for example.
Yeah, that's true. But then that's tough because it's only 2 weeks potentially. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not much of a long term. And I saw his EO, it's huge. So yeah, defenders are going to be very popular topic, but its fixtures are making them tricky at the moment for the next week or two anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no Liverpool defenders you want, especially when you look at the price.
No, exactly. Right, lovely stuff. Chat, thank you so much for joining us. I think we peaked at about 300 people, which is fantastic considering the United game was on as well. We peaked at half-time, so thank you very much for joining us if you did. And thank you so much if you're listening back after the fact as well. It does happen where obviously we do Monday nights. It's nice to sometimes watch the games while we're streaming. Sometimes it's not always quite such a prominent game either. But obviously we appreciate that we're watching it while we're doing it. So thank you very much for joining us. Rich, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed your evening with us.
Yeah, I did. I've been looking forward to it. We didn't even mention, but I actually enjoyed having FPL back. It was quite fun, and I'm looking forward to this game week as well, even though it's only 9 games this weekend.
No, exactly. Oh god, yeah, I forgot that. And Seb, I hope you enjoyed your evening as well.
Yeah, I really did. I don't know what Richie's talking about though. I'm a couple of points behind him. FPL is terrible. Where's the summer? I want it back. No, I mean, if I'm honest, if I was to extend that, I think the thing I enjoy most is coming on here and chatting to you two about it. So, what an absolute privilege, and thanks very much to you and everyone listening to letting us do it again for another year.
Yeah, thank you. And I think someone's already put it in the chat. Make sure you do like it, guys. That would really help us. So thank you very much. We will see you all next week. Bye bye.